How yin's doing? I'm Ian, and this is the Potion Craft Effect Guide. In this video, I'll show you how to make each and every effect in the game. Given that a lot of the fun of this game is figuring things out for yourself, I advise that you simply use the timestamps in the description to find the specific effect you're stuck on rather than watching this video from start to finish. But if you feel like watching this video from start to finish, I won't stop you. Not like I could, even if I wanted to. After all, this is a pre-made video, not a live stream, so I have no way of reactively seeing what's going on. So without further ado, let's ignore the fact you're not wearing any pants and get into it. Starting with the effects you'll need to complete Chapter 1 of this game, Healing. The Healing Potion effect is something you'll be forced to make in the game's tutorial using Terraria Root and Water Bloom Flowers, but personally I find using well-ground up Life Leaf to be the best ingredient you can use in the game for this potion effect. This is because Life Leaf sends you in a southeastward direction on a direct collision course with the healing effect. Next on the list we have Poison. Poison is pretty easy to make in this game, just head in a southwestward direction from your starting position on the map. At the start of the game, you'll be forced to use Terraria Root and Firebell Flowers, but personally I find the best ingredient to use for making this potion is the stink mushrooms that are growing in your garden at game start. Just keep in mind, while these mushrooms are in your garden at game start, they aren't fully grown, so you'll need to water and wait a few in-game days before they're ready for harvest. Moving on to the Frost Effect file, the Frost Effect can be found directly east of your starting position on the map. While it is possible to create a high-quality version of this potion using exclusively the Water Bloom Flowers you start the game with, I highly recommend finding alternative ingredients as you progress through the game in order to conserve your Water Bloom Flowers for other alchemic experiments. An ingredient I am personally rather fond of using in this game in order to conserve my more valuable ingredients is Tangleweed. Tangleweed sends you in the same general direction as Water Bloom Flowers, but it takes vertical loops as it goes about the eastward direction you need for this effect. This can be problematic when using Tangleweed to make frost potions, since there is a bone field close to your northern flank as you're making this potion effect, meaning you'll need to be careful about how much you're grinding up and using this ingredient. The best practice I advise for those of you who are trying to use Tangleweed specifically to make frost potions is to simply put in the first dose raw and then grind up subsequent doses of Tangleweed in the mortar and pestle. There are many other ingredients that can be used to get this effect, however, so don't be afraid to experiment. I just personally prefer using Tangleweed since they can be grown in the outdoor pond extension for your garden, which means it doesn't compete for garden space with your other more useful ingredients. The last potion effect you'll need to complete in order to get past Chapter 1 of this game is Fire. The Fire effect vial is unsurprisingly found directly west of your starting position, in the opposite direction of the Frost effect vial. Interestingly, the Fire effect vial is also slightly north of your starting position on the map, which means Firebell Flowers alone will not be able to create a +3 effect of this potion. You'll need something that can send you up northward on the map. The only ingredient you'll have access to at the start of the game that can do this will be the Wind Bloom Flowers, but you may find other ingredients you prefer more as you progress through the game. Moving along to the effects you'll need for Chapter 2, Explosives. In order to create explosives in this game, you'll need to head northwest of your starting position on the map. The best ingredient early on in the game that I have found for making explosive potions is Mad Mushrooms. Mad Mushrooms send you on a collision course with the explosive effect vial. Just be sure not to apply heat preemptively while making this potion, because there is a whirlpool in the direction you'll need to head to in order to get to this effect vial. So if you're the kind of person who wants to make their potions as quickly as possible by applying heat to their brews preemptively before reaching the effect vial, you're going to want to cut that crap out when making explosives. Next on the list of potions we need to cover is Wild Growth. Wild Growth is one of the most useful potions in the game because it can actually be used for something other than selling to customers who come into your store. This is because Wild Growth, as the name implies, can be used to accelerate the growth of the plants you plant in your garden, meaning the time it takes from a sapling to grow into a harvestable crop is going to be drastically reduced if you use this potion. The effect vial for this potion can be found southeast of your starting position on the map. The best way to get there in my experience is to head southeast of your starting position on the map past the healing effect vial until you reach a whirlpool and then head east. Marking the halfway point of the potion effects we need to complete Chapter 2, we have Strength. The Strength effect vial can be found directly south of your starting position on the map, but be warned, in order to reach this effect vial, you'll have to go through a narrow passageway between two bone fields. There are many different ways to go about dealing with these bone fields, and the choice is yours. Many new players will assume that the only way they can make a potion at the start of the game is by using the Terraria root in their garden, and early on this is a good ingredient to use. But it is possible to use the Dryad saddle growing on the tree in your garden instead if you know what you're doing. But I know what yins are thinking. It has a wide horizontal swing. There's no way we'd be able to clear the bone fields without crashing into them and ruining a brew. And normally, you'd be correct, if not for the whirlpools. You see, if you end up throwing yourself into a whirlpool and apply heat to it, the whirlpool will teleport you around. And these whirlpools teleport you to set locations. So if you go through a whirlpool once and see where it teleports you, and you use it again, it'll send you to the exact same position as before. This means the whirlpool at the entrance of the narrow passageway between the bone fields as you head south to the strength effect vial can be used to help you bypass this narrow passage entirely, since it teleports you about halfway down the corridor you need to in order to reach the strength effect vial. And since the narrow passage you need to get through in the bone fields expands as you head further south, you'll have more than enough room to use the Dryad saddle for the rest of the way. Up next, we have the Dexterity Effect Vial. This effect vial can be found northeast of the Frost Effect Vial. And early on in the game, the best route to making this potion effect is to simply head east like you would make a Frost Potion, and then continue on northeast until you reach the effect vial we're covering right now. Early on in the game, this most likely will consist of you using water bloom flowers and wind bloom flowers in order to reach this effect vial. However, later on in the game, you may wish to conserve these or whatever other ingredients you decided to use early on in order to use those ingredients later for different alchemic concoctions. Because of this, there is a secondary route I will cover right now because it's far more efficient late in the game when you have more advanced ingredients. Simply head northeast above the bone fields that flank the Frost Effect Vial's northern area. Once you're clear above these bone fields, you'll want to head directly east until you reach a whirlpool, and then head southeast. The last effect we need to create in order to get past Chapter 2 is Swiftness. This is very easy to understand. It's just head directly north of your starting position on the map. This will almost certainly involve you using wind bloom flowers early on in the game. But personally, I find foggy parasol mushrooms to be the best ingredient for this potion. This is because this mushroom will actually send you up in a clear straight line if you don't grind it up first. But don't be afraid to experiment with different ingredients you unlock as you progress through the game. It's entirely possible you might accidentally discover something better than I have. Just to prove a point about how you'll always be discovering something new in this game, that little trick with the Dryad saddle I mentioned earlier in the strength effect vial portion of this video, yeah, I discovered that while recording for this video, after 100%ing this game on Steam achievements. Moving along to the effects we'll need to get past Chapter 3, Lightning. The Lightning effect vial can be found almost directly east of the Swiftness effect vial. The easiest way to go about making this potion is to simply head north to the Swiftness effect vial and then use whatever ingredients you like to go eastward. Personally, when I take this route, I like to use foggy parasol mushrooms and tangleweed, but there is an alternative route. If you decide to head northeast around the bone fields that'll be flanking your right side if you head to a Swiftness effect vial, you'll eventually find a whirlpool. If you travel north past this whirlpool, you'll find the lightning effect vial directly above you. From here, it's a simple matter of adjusting your angle so that you can get the highest quality effect you desire. Up next, mana potions. Mana potions can be found directly northeast of your starting position on the map, directly south of the lightning effect vial we just covered. I find witch mushrooms to be the best ingredient for making this potion, since, much like the previously covered mad mushrooms and the explosive effect vial, they send you more or less on a straight shot towards the desired effect. Next on the list, we have the Stone Skin Potion. The Stone Skin Potion effect vial can be found directly south of the strength effect vial. However, there is a giant bone field in the way, preventing you from going there in a straight line unless you use gemstones to jump the distance. Thankfully for yins, I know a shortcut. There's a whirlpool directly east of the strength effect vial. Go there and let the whirlpool suck you in by applying heat to your potion until you teleport around. This whirlpool that is directly east of the strength effect vial, not the one west, the eastern one, will teleport you directly south a little bit east of the Stone Skin effect vial. From here, it's a simple matter of heading west and making sure you don't accidentally crash into the bone fields that are directly to your north. Up next, we have Sleep Potions. The Sleep Potion effect vial is very close to the Wild Growth Potion effect vial. In fact, it's more or less spitting distance northeast of it. But the best route to reaching this potion effect vial from the starting position, in my opinion, is to simply head east to the Frost effect vial and then head southeast. The last of the effects we need to cover in order to get past Chapter 3 of this game is Light. The Light effect vial can be found directly west of the Fire effect vial. However, there is a bone field in the way between it and the Fire effect vial, so moving in a straight line is not an option unless you use gemstones to teleport around. Otherwise, you'll need to head either north or south around the bone fields. I recommend the south since that tends to be less ingredient intensive of a route. However, there is a whirlpool in the way, so you don't want to apply heat to your potion if you want to go about this way, lest the whirlpool throw off your trajectory. Moving on to the effects you need to complete Chapter 4 of this game, we have the potion that every teenage girl thinks is a good idea to use, but as Voldemort's mother can probably tell you, it doesn't pan out as well as you think it does. I am, of course, referring to love potions, or as they're referred to in-game, charm potions. The charm potion effect vial can be found more or less directly north of the explosives effect vial. However, I find the best and most convenient way to get to it is by heading straight north past the Swiftness effect vial and then heading northwest. If you are applying heat to your potions before it reaches the effect vial in order to save time stirring your potions, please keep in mind that there is a whirlpool directly southeast of the charm effect vial, so you'll want to be extra careful your first time traveling this part of the map. I highly recommend Mad Mushrooms for those of you early on in the game trying to create this potion. However, please keep in mind that this effect vial is far too complicated to reach with a singular ingredient. Much like the next effect vial we need to cover, Slow. The Slow effect vial can be found more or less directly southeast of the Stone Skin effect vial. Unfortunately, however, this effect vial has a bone field surrounding it 180 degrees to its northern flank, which means you'll have to carefully maneuver around it to the south in order to reach this effect vial. Additionally, directly southwest of the Slow effect vial is a whirlpool, which will mean that if you're trying to rush through this potion by applying heat to your concoction preemptively before reaching the effect vial, you can easily have your trajectory thrown off course and have your potion ruined. This means, fittingly, when making a slow potion, it's best that you take things slowly. And while yes, it is possible to use gemstones to simply teleport over the bone fields and ignore the whirlpool entirely, the slow potion is actually a key ingredient in Negretto, which is the first step of creating the Philosopher's Stone, which means by the time you've actually progressed far enough into the story where you can reliably use gemstones to create any kind of potion you want, you've probably already made this potion a few times long before that. The next potion we need to cover in order to get past Chapter 4 is Rage Potions. Also known as Social Media in a Bottle, this effect vial can be found northwest of your starting position on a map, a bit further past the Explosives effect vial. Please keep in mind, however, that there is a bone field, much like with the Slow effect vial, creating a 180-degree shield, preventing you from just traveling in a straight line. If you're starting from the Charm effect vial, which is actually the closest effect vial to the Rage Potion effect vial, you'll want to simply head further west and then south in order to reach to it. However, personally, I like to simply start by heading northwest from your starting position on a map past the Explosives effect vial until you reach the bone field, and then carefully maneuver myself westward and then north and then east. The best advice I can give those Evians who are creating this potion and have already cleared the bone fields is the fact that if you try to water down your potion, it'll actually gravitate towards the center of the map. And if you look carefully, you'll notice a small transparent dotted line emanating out of both the potion vial that you control as well as the effect vials. If you can get these effect vials to line up perfectly with one another, and then start watering down the potion, I can guarantee that there will be a moment where they'll get a +3 effect vial. If you decide to take this technique, be sure not to water your potion down too quickly, lest it fall out of alignment and you'll need to add more ingredients in order to get you back to the tier 3 effect. The last potion effect we need to create in order to get past Chapter 4 is Magical Vision. Magical Vision is one of the trickier effect vials to reach in this game simply because it's inside a cocoon of bone fields. There's only 2 ways in past the bone fields if you're not using gemstones to teleport over them. Within the sphere of bone fields surrounding this effect vial, there are 2 slits. One is at the northeastern corner of the bone fields surrounding this effect vial. This is the more ingredient-intensive route in order to get this effect vial since it's further away from your starting position on the map. However, it doesn't have a whirlpool directly next to it in your way. So if you don't care about how many ingredients you're using and just want to apply heat to the potion preemptively to save time on stirring, potions of magical vision can be produced through this method. However, personally, I recommend coming in through the other entrance found at the southwestern corner of the bone fields engulfing this effect vial. A good place to start is to do whatever it is you prefer to do when you create a dexterity potion. Then head north to the nearby whirlpool northwest of the dexterity effect vial. You'll then have to head through the previously mentioned slit that leads to the magical vision effect vial. I recommend witch mushrooms in order to close the gap since it's a very tight fit and trying to use multiple ingredients in order to close the gap can be tricky. Potions of magical vision are easily some of the trickiest to create potions you'll have to make in the early game. So once you've been able to create a concoction with stuff that you can grow readily in your garden, I highly recommend saving it to your cookbook so that you don't have to manually create them ever again. Moving right along to the effects we'll need to complete in order to get past Chapter 5, Acid. Acid is found southwest of your starting position on the map, past the Poison effect vial. Stink mushrooms and hairy bananas are excellent choices of ingredients when going about making this potion. However, don't be afraid to experiment with other ingredients, since you will need some extra horizontal mobility to the west in order to reach this effect vial. Now, if only I could figure out why people think this is an acceptable solution to having a jammed door, as opposed to the strength and dexterity potions I initially tried to sell them. The next potion you'll need to be able to create in order to get past Chapter 5 is an aphrodisiac, or a libido potion as it's referred to in-game. Similar to the previously covered magical vision effect vial, this potion effect is surrounded by bone fields with only 2 slits in order to allow you inside without needing gemstones to teleport in. However, unlike magical vision, it's far easier to maneuver your way in, since the slits in order to get past the bone fields take place at the northern and southern end of the sphere. My advice when creating this potion is to simply head west, similar to if you were creating a fire effect potion, head past it, and then head northwest. Then once you're at the southern entrance to the bone field cage that the libido potion effect vial is stuck in, head north. Personally, I found sulfur shelf mushrooms to be an excellent gap closer from the distance between your starting position and when you start needing to make a turn around the bone fields that engulf the light effect vial. This is because sulfur shelf mushrooms can grow on the tree in your garden, similar to the dryad saddle that's already growing there at game start, meaning it doesn't need to compete for garden space with other more valuable ingredients, meaning it's a useful gap closer on certain effects. As for maneuvering yourself into the bone field itself, I am personally partial to foggy parasol mushrooms, but the wind bloom flowers growing in your garden at game start are perfectly serviceable for this task. The next potion on the Chapter 5 list is Invisibility. The Invisibility effect vial can be found northeast of the Swiftness effect vial. Simply head north like you would make a Swiftness effect potion, and then head northeast. The bone fields jut out in weird ways, however, in this direction, so you'll have to do some weird maneuvering in order to get to the effect vial, so don't be surprised if you need to head west and around a bit in order to create this potion effect. The fourth potion effect we need to create in order to get past Chapter 5 of this game is Levitation. Levitation is one of the more frequently requested effects from those who come into your shop. The Levitation effect vial can be found directly west of the Invisibility effect vial. However, the bone fields form something of a T-shape between the two, so heading between one and the other is borderline impossible. The most convenient route in my experience is to simply head north as if you were creating a Swiftness effect vial, and then head west around the bone fields, and then head east in order to get inside the nook and cranny it's inside of. There is one other way to go about this, but it requires a very specific ingredient known as cloud crystals. You see, gemstones in potion craft allow you to teleport across the map, meaning you can simply jump over the bone fields, meaning you don't need to maneuver around them in certain scenarios. But if you want to use the teleporting properties of gemstones in order to make your life easier, I recommend saving them for the next effect we have to cover, Necromancy. The Necromancy effect vial can be found more or less directly south of the Acid effect vial. However, it's completely engulfed in bone fields, making it near impossible to reach by normal methods. If you're not using gemstones to simply teleport over the bone fields and ignore them wholesale, there's only one way you can actually make this effect. There's a small section in the bone fields surrounding the Necromancy effect vial that is very narrow. It's possible to force your way through here if you stir fast enough. Because of the direction you need to travel in order to cross this gap, as well as the general direction you need to reach this effect vial in the first place, I highly recommend hairy banana mushrooms when making a necromancy potion. Once past the bone fields, you have to maneuver around them very carefully, since the necromancy effect vial effectively exists inside of a crude swirl within the bone fields. And since this swirl is filled with whirlpools, you'll need to go through this area very carefully and methodically. However, that's quite a pain in the ass in the grand scheme of things if you ask me, so I recommend just using gemstones to teleport over the bone fields entirely and skip all that nonsense. The easiest method of creating a necromancy potion, in my opinion, is to simply head southwest to the acid effect vial using hairy banana mushrooms, and then heading south over the bone fields using earth pyrite crystals. But there's more than one way to skin a cat, so don't be afraid to experiment with your own concoctions to try to find a more optimal recipe. Interestingly, the Necromancy potion effect actually has the highest sell value out of any potion you can brew in the game. However, customers will not come in requesting this potion effect unless you have a sufficiently negative reputation score. This means players with a high reputation score will have very little reason to create a Necromancy potion whatsoever. We're now moving on to Chapter 6 and the Oil Map. That's right, there's different maps in this game where you can brew your potions and stuff other than water. When you inevitably decide to do this, you'll end up changing the map you're brewing on completely. and I highly recommend doing this since it makes certain potion effects far easier to produce. Case in point, Poison Resistance. Poison Resistance is an effect that can be most easily found on the oil map by heading southeast of your starting position past the healing effect vial. This effect, however, does require you to travel a good bit of distance across the oil map in order to produce. Because of this, I recommend avoiding using the ingredients you start the game with and focus on using the ones you will have surely unlocked by this point in the game. For the production of oil-based poison-resist potions, I find Druid's Rosemary and Healer's Hearth to be ideal. But don't be afraid to experiment with different ingredients as you progress through this new map. And on the subject of the new oil map, please keep in mind those areas demarcated by the horizontal lines are not bone fields that will cause your potion to be completely destroyed, but rather swampy areas that will throw off the trajectory of your dotted line. Please keep that in mind as we go over the next effect we have to make here. That being Lightning Resistance. The Lightning Resistance effect vial can be found more or less directly south of your starting position on the oil map. I find the best method of making this potion is to simply head south to the Stone Skin effect vial and then carefully maneuvering yourself through the bone field south of that until you reach the effect. I find mud shrooms to be the ideal ingredient for making this potion specifically, since they send you more or less in the right direction and cover such a long distance that you can effectively brute force your way through the swampy areas of the oil map without needing to worry too much about wasting ingredients. Because while the swampy areas of the oil map do throw off the trajectory of your brew, it always does so in a predictable pushback method, in that whatever the distance the dotted line says you're going to be traveling, you're only going to be traveling about half as much in that direction, as it will be pushing back in the opposite direction the entire time. The next effect we need to cover is Fire Protection. Fire Protection potions can be created on an oil map by simply heading directly east of your starting position. As for what kind of ingredients you can use, really anything that sends you in an eastward direction is ideal, but personally I recommend Tangleweed since you can effectively use it to brute force your way through the swampy area without needing to worry about wasting a more valuable ingredient. Yes, I did put way too many Tangleweed plants in my pond on my first playthrough, why did you ask? Moving on to the next effect we need to cover, Frost Protection. Frost Protection works in a similar manner to Fire Protection, just replace the word east with west. Head west of your starting position on an oil map and you will find it slightly to your south. I could go on and on about the different ingredients you can use to make this potion, but honestly half the fun of this game is figuring stuff out for yourself, so I'll let you figure out the most optimal path in terms of what ingredients you have growing in your garden. The next effect we have to cover is Glue. A glue potion can be found on an oil map directly south of the Stone Skin effect and slightly northwest of the Lightning Protection effect. As a result, making a Lightning Protection potion and making a glue potion when using oil as your baseline solution is more or less the same procedure. Head south past the Stone Skin effect, be careful not to crash into the bone fields. The only real difference here is, instead of heading further south after you're past the bone fields, is to head off to the west. So after you've used your mud and shrooms to get past the swampy areas and the Stone Skin effect, you're going to want to have some Firebell flowers on hand in order to get your alignment correct. Depending on the angle you're going at this potion effect, however, Druid's Rosemary might also be useful. Next is a potion of Slipperiness. The Slipperiness effect vial can be found more or less directly southwest of the Fire Protection effect vial, so just head out east and then head slightly south before you hit the Fire Protection effect. Interestingly, the effect vial for the Slipperiness potions on the oil map is of a similar orientation to the Sleep Potion effect vial on the water map. This means any ingredients you found useful in the production of a sleep potion should also be equally useful here, although the exact amount of these ingredients will probably be slightly different than when you are making the sleep potion. The last potion effect we need to create in order to get past Chapter 6 is Stench. The Stench potion effect vial can be found on an oil map directly southwest of your starting position, not too far past the poison effect vial. Hairy banana mushrooms, in my opinion, are one of the best ingredients you can use in order to create this potion. But honestly, anything you found useful in the production of acid earlier in this video should also work here. Moving along to effects we'll need to complete Chapter 7, Acid Protection. The Acid Protection effect vial can be found on the oil map directly southeast of the Poison Protection vial. This means the Druid's Rosemary and Healer's Hearth I recommended for the production of Poison Protection is going to be just as useful here. You're just going to need a little more of it in order to get this potion effect. The next effect we need to cover is Anti-Magic. Anti-Magic effect potions are best made in the oil map by heading northeast of your starting position. Be warned, however, it is quite a trek out there, and there's multiple spotches of swampy areas and bone fields to make things difficult on your way there, so you'll need to use a lot of different ingredients in order to get there efficiently. So be sure that you're well stocked on ingredients before you attempt making this potion. Next on the list of potion effects we need to make, Shrinking. In order to create a potion of Shrinking, you'll need to head east past the Fire Protection effect vial on the oil map. Once again, like with all potions that require you to head eastward on the map, I recommend Tingleweed. However, don't be afraid to experiment with any ingredient that sends you in an eastward direction and see what you like best. Be forewarned, however, that the Shrinking Potion effect vial is slightly southeast of the Fire Protection effect vial, so don't go thinking you can travel in a straight line in order to get this potion made. The second to last effect we need to cover in order to get past Chapter 7 is Enlargement. The Enlargement effect vial can be found on the westernmost edge of the oil map. This means if you have any ingredients that were very useful in the production of a frost resistance potion on the oil map, you'll want to consider using the same ingredients here in order to close the gap. Just bear in mind that when you would normally head southwest in order to reach the frost effect vial, you'll now need to go up and around the bone fields in order to get to the enlargement effect vial. Perplexingly, NPCs who come in to buy this potion almost exclusively use this potion for bedroom shenanigans. I mean, I get it, that is a valid use case for this potion, but I don't know, you'd think someone would come up with another use case for this potion at some point. The last potion we need to create in order to get past Chapter 7 is Rejuvenation. The Rejuvenation effect vial is more or less directly east of the Acid Resistance effect vial on the oil map. Personally, my preference to making this potion is to simply head southeast of your starting position on the map with Druid's Rosemary, and then heading directly east once you're past the Acid effect vial with Tingleweed. But just like cooking chicken, there are so many different ways you can go about making this potion that, quite frankly, it would be a shame for you not to experiment at some point. We are now in Chapter 8 and the endgame potion effects. When making these potion effects, please keep in mind that we will be traveling around the wine map, which requires you to use gemstones in order to jump over a sea of bone field. So if you haven't gotten the extension of your garden that lets you grow gemstones, you're going to want to get the extension of your garden that lets you grow gemstones. The first effect we'll need to create in order to get past Chapter 8 is Inspiration. If you have access to the wine map, making a potion of Inspiration is honestly rather quite simple. Just head directly north on the wine map. I find cloud crystals to be a must-have ingredient for creating this potion effect specifically. The next ingredient we need to create in order to get past Chapter 8 is Fragrance. For best results of creating a fragrance potion, I recommend heading to the southeast corner of the wine map. The best way to get there, in my opinion, is to use sapphires to jump over to the little island in the bone fields where you can see the frost effect vial, then head southeast using life crystals. You may want to use regular ingredients to move around the little islands in the bone field in order to adjust your angle with the crystals in order to get to the other islands in the bone field sea that is the wine map. The last potion effect we'll need to create in order to get past Chapter 8 of this game is Fear. The best way to make a fear potion in this game, in my opinion, is to head to the northwest corner of the wine map. I find blood rubies to be an excellent starting ingredient when going about this potion, since they send you in the right direction. However, be warned that the islands you'll need to be jumping between on the wine map in order to reach this effect vial are positioned in such a way that it is functionally impossible to reach them with only one ingredient whatsoever. So you'll need to use multiple different kinds of gemstone in order to reach this potion effect. Now moving on to Chapter 9 of this game, we cover the last 3 effects we have yet to cover, starting with Hallucinations. The Hallucinations effect vial can be found in the northeastern corner of the wine map. The best way to get there, in my opinion, is to use frost sapphires to jump between the islands eastward and then head north with cloud crystals. Conveniently for us, the next potion effect vial we'll need to cover is very close by to the Hallucinations effect vial, that being Luck. The Luck effect vial can be found directly southeast of the Hallucinations effect vial on the wine map. So head east using sapphires like you did with the Hallucinations effect potion, then as you're heading north, make sure that once you reach the island with the Magic Vision effect vial on it, you head east instead of north. The last potion effect we have yet to cover in this game are Curse Potions. Curse Potions are most easily made by heading southwest of your starting position on the wine map. I find Fire Citrine and Plague Sibonite to be the best ingredients for creating this potion effect specifically. But that's gonna be all for now. Be sure to like the video if you did, comment if I got anything wrong down below. I've been Ian, you have been you, and this has been the Potion Craft Effect Guide. Thank you all for watching.